word kind of got out, and so I'd start getting, because I at this point I'm like, I'm going to charge for it, like it's like
why don't I try and make some money?
Well, I might as well try to make a little money and not just to give it away. And word's getting around, and so then I started kind of getting calls from someone at Vogue or someone at Wired or someone at Allure that had heard about this cold brew coffee guy. These are the trendsetters and these are the tastemakers, and they're addicted to my coffee. Next thing I know, I'm taking the L train into the city, carrying 12 of these really heavy 1 liter bottles of cold brew, and I'm just kind of acting like a drug dealer, like doing cash transactions.
I got you.
I got you, and that was it. I mean, there were cash transactions in the elevator banks of Condé Nast.
You got my cold brew, man. I need it.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the show. Today I have Grady Laird from Grady's Cold Brew. It's an 8-figure coffee brand, cold brew coffee brand. I think one of the interesting things at Grady's, lots of interesting things about this brand. We're going to get into sort of why the world needs another coffee company, why Grady started it, and a little bit non-traditional route to it, right? So most people either bootstrap it or they raise money. He actually went the route of getting some loans from the bank and crowdfunding. So Grady, welcome to the show. I like to start here. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. What are some of the things that you thought maybe were normal at the time, right? You don't know, you're a kid, but really sort of shaped the way that you interact with the world.
Sure. So thank you for having me on. I definitely appreciate that. So I grew up in the Midwest, a variety of what people would consider flyover states: Iowa, South Dakota, Kansas, and then the bulk of my childhood in Missouri. And I would say that if there was one thing that kind of foreshadowed what I would eventually do, is I always grew up loving factory tour programs.
Okay.
If that's the Crayola factory on Reading Rainbow, or the Jelly Belly factory, I remember the Discovery Show, how it's made, Food Network factory tours, stuff like that. I just always had an idea that I wanted to make something tangible. That's
a common thing. So there's like a few common things I see. I think breadcrumbs that lead to entrepreneurship, and obviously it's not a perfect correlation. But like one is, I would say one is somebody who took like a sport or a thing, music, whatever, very seriously, like was just like super serious about that one thing for a long time, and that was their life. Another one is like people who were just the hustler, flipping shoes, doing stuff like that.
Sure.
Another is like what I would call sort of the umbrella is like tinkerers. So sometimes they were gamers and they're kind of learning how things worked there. They're learning how computers work. Sometimes they're just fascinated with how things are built,
right,
or how things are made. They like Discovery Channel shows, right? Like they just want to know how things work. So you kind of,
and I also had, definitely a background. All my kind of jobs in high school and college were, hospitality, but back house, like, line cook and working in restaurants and stuff like that. And, I just loved that environment, was reading the Kitchen Confidentials when I was young and stuff like that. And that industry and the kind of more behind the scenes side of it always really appealed to me.
Hey, y'all, quick break to talk about the most important part of your business, which is hiring. I've hired a lot of team members from the Philippines. They're super hard workers. The problem is I have to come up with an exact checklist for them to follow, and I am not good at that. So they end up being held back by me. This is why I love working with More Staffing. More Staffing specializes in finding talent from the Philippines that is high level. So you can just hand them your goals and they'll use their skills to get you there. I've actually done some hiring through More Staffing, and they were able to find me seriously great marketers for around a third of the price that I would pay a US employee. So if that sounds like it could help you, go to morenow.com/MC so that they know that you came from the podcast. That helps support the podcast, and it helps improve your business because you get great talent for a third of the price. So that's morenow.com/MC. Okay, back to the show.
So, I mean, you're from the Midwest, like proper. My family is also from the Midwest. Most people in the Midwest, and this is like if you're watching the show either from overseas or from a major metropolitan, and you're not from the Midwest, kind of the life trajectory is like grow up, go to high school, maybe go to a local college, maybe not, maybe just become a tradesman, get married, have kids, settle down, live in the same town your parents grew up in, rinse, repeat for generations and generations and generations. You moved to New York City.
Yeah.
I mean, usually people move to a city if they have like aspirations of, Hollywood or like, being an actor, actress, being something like that. But tell me why. Because everyone who moves to New York City, they want to do something.
Right. So I did go to the University of Missouri, which is in my hometown, Columbia, and it's a beautiful little college town. Really enjoyed it there. And you're right, a lot of my friends are still there. A lot of my family's still there. But
you go 2 towns over, maybe. Like, oh no, yeah, we moved all the way over.
A lot of people are in St. Louis or Kansas City, but I did know that it wasn't long term for me, and so I graduated with a journalism degree with actually an emphasis in advertising. I wanted to be on Madison Avenue. It was Mad Men, and I wanted to make ads for the Super Bowl, and that's definitely, it was kind of between Chicago and New York City, and decided to go to New York. But what's crazy is I graduated in 2001, and after a little bit of summer, I moved here to the city. But I moved here 2 weeks before September 11th with no job, no apartment, nothing.
Where did you stay? Help me understand that. Did you know people here? Like
stayed with a friend, and actually in Hoboken for the first week, and then met up with 2 people that I kind of knew from back home, but not really. I went to a different high school, and they ended up becoming my roommates. So I did have an apartment in Chelsea at the time when September 11th happened, and obviously it was extremely dramatic for everyone. It was really a bizarre thing for me because on one end I was completely green. I was a tourist, but I'm not. I actually have an apartment here. I'm living here. And so it was just a really weird feeling. If anything, I think it really rapidly bonded me to the city, having that experience with everyone.
I was speaking with somebody. We're shooting this episode in the city. Little fourth wall break there. I was speaking with somebody who grew up here, like in Westchester, whatever. And they said, anyone who was in the city at that time, they were affected. Like a close friend or a family member was like killed, right?
Yeah.
Usually a direct family member, like a sister, brother, dad, mom, or a very close friend, died, right? And that's what that was. This whole city essentially had like a major loss all at once. And then you're here and you're like, I mean, I didn't really have one.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I didn't have that. But
you're moving around. You're operating in this city where everybody is like basically grieving all at once. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, no, it was really a crazy experience, and it wasn't easy. But you're right, I didn't have the same kind of personal connections that people that kind of grew up here had. Was it like being at a funeral for like 3 weeks? Like you just knew everybody was sort of in that. Yeah, and everyone because New York City obviously has a reputation of not being the most polite people, especially compared to the Midwest.
In the Midwest,
right.
Yeah.
But I got here, and right after September 11th, everyone was just so kind and like almost over the top Midwestern, polite and please and thank yous. And I remember,
you're like, this is, I don't know what to think.
No, well, I remember
everybody's really nice here. I don't know why everyone.
A couple weeks after the fact, I was like, there was a crosswalk and a taxi cab almost hit a pedestrian. The pedestrian just slammed his hands on the hood and yelled, "Fuck you!" Sorry, I don't know if I can cuss.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
And I was like, "Oh, okay. This is what I expected. It seems like
I'm walking here." Yeah.
So quickly kind of shifted back, but from a career perspective, it was really tough. I mean, I think that advertising was one of the first things that was kind of cut from a lot of budgets, and so I could not find a job for the life of me.
So take me to that decision, because I think the most practical thing most people do is they graduate college and they get kind of whatever job they can. And if they do want to move to a city, they do want to move to Chicago or New York, which, by the way, most people in the Midwest, it ends up being Chicago.
Right.
But let's say they do want to move to a city. They get a job where they can, maybe not in the city, and they try and work their way there. like explain the decision to just go without any prospects.
Yeah, and truth be told, I got to be completely thankful of my parents for helping me, support me at that early stage. So it wasn't like I had nothing, but immediately I just knew that you had to be there if you're going to be interviewing, if you're going to be working. Like you got to be there. I wasn't going to make flights to do interviews, anything like that, and quickly got jobs doing temp work and anything to alleviate any strain on my parents and make it so I'm paying my own rent and stuff like that. But it took a long time. I was not able to
find anything.
Could not find anything in advertising.
What kind of stuff were you doing, like temp work?
Well, the weirdest one was I was a professional audience member on the Sally Jesse Raphael show.
What is a professional audience member?
You clap.
Oh, nice. I could do that job.
It was great.
I mean, there's not a lot of jobs I could do. But I could do that
no, I was good at it.
Did they tell you when to do it?
You had like a hype person that made it clear.
If you just got to fill it out, I could see.
Yeah, and Judge Hatchett was another professional audience member gig. I worked at the Folk Art Museum, just anything and everything. And finally, after kind of 9 months and getting pretty close to when I was like, I don't know if I can do this in terms of, without a true kind of salary job. This is a really expensive place to live. But I finally got a job at an advertising agency, but it was a pharmaceutical advertising agency, and I was on the gonorrhea account.
Nice.
So
it's the dream job.
Yeah, the dream job of Madison Avenue.
Right. Advertising the gonorrhea drugs.
Right. And so, spent a year in that, and because of all the regulations, stuff like that, really that form of advertising, pharma is not fun. Right. And after a year, I was like, that's it. Luckily, I had met who ended up becoming my wife, who actually was from my hometown as well, Columbia, Missouri, but we met in New York City.
You met in New York City? And she's from New York
City, yeah.
Did you know her growing up at all?
No, I knew she was 4 years older than me. And so
I knew her family because everybody knows.
I knew her younger sister. She knew my older brother, but I had never...
That is such a Midwest.
Yeah, never met her.
No, I never met her, but, obviously.
Right. She also went to the J School, University of Missouri, but she was an editor in magazines, and she got me into the publishing world. And so and I love that. And this was at the kind of height of the glossy magazines and really.
So this is like late 90s, early 2000s, or mid 2000s?
This is 2001 to 2011, that period. And working at primarily men's magazines. So I worked at Details. I worked for magazine called Men's Vogue, Man Vogue,
Man Vogue,
GQ, Bon Appetit, and I think what's interesting is out of those four,
GQ's still around, right?
GQ's still around, Bon App is still around, but Details and Men's Vogue are no longer.
Was Men's Vogue an offshoot of just Vogue?
Yeah.
That one's still around, but
that one's definitely still around.
Apparently men don't need to be Vogue.
No.
Men do not feel the need.
No, it was a very good magazine, but ended up not working out long term. But and I think that transition from, this is the height. This is Devil Wears Prada. This is, really when magazines were massive.
So and you had that,
I had that experience.
That
I was in, meetings with Anna Wintour when, not as a peon, as a production assistant, but I was able to kind of be around it, and I loved it, and it was a really, really fun job. But as things kind of progressed, I was a print production editor, so kind of a dying position within a dying industry.
What is that? Explain that.
Print production, so you have the designers and the photography department, they're making the layout, and then you have the writers and the editors that are doing the words, and the production person brings those two pieces together and fits it in a layout. And so it's not like online when you have unlimited.
So you have to coordinate
space
with them and be like, hey, can you shave off 50
bigger?
words?
Exactly. Can you fill or cut a little bit? And then I would also go on press and check the color of the cover and say, hey, we need a little more cyan, stuff like that.
Yeah. You know how? Do you know the names of so many colors?
I know those. The four that make up.
Right. The four that make up everything.
Right.
I can tell you some hex codes.
Yeah, but a lot of PMS work and stuff like that. But I kind of saw the writing on the wall that magazines were on a decline, and my job specifically was on a decline.
What was the vibe around the buildings then? Were people getting cut regularly? Was there a lot of like worry and stress?
Yeah, there were. I mean, I definitely survived, you know, a number of rounds of layoffs, and so you always have that kind of dark cloud hanging over people, and people just see it. And I think that one of the things that happened that almost really kind of accelerated, but at the time it seemed like a last ditch effort to kind of remain really relevant, is when the iPad came out, and it was just an arms race that everyone felt that they had to make these iPad versions of the magazines. So you get down to in the print magazine, then you had to do a vertical, then a horizontal version. But the problem with the iPad was that it was static, you know, and the beauty of the internet is news is always changing. And so it's always, you know, up to date. And that wasn't the case with these kind of iPad versions. And, you know, the last really big glossy magazine that came out was Portfolio at Condé Nast, and they spent $100 million on it or whatever. But you know, this is at the height of the financial crisis, and it's a monthly magazine, and that doesn't work. You know, news is traveling too fast, and you know, by the time you get it in the mail or you buy it at the newsstand, like, it's old news, and so that really affected things.
Yeah, I mean, and just to a little like back setting here, Condé Nast is a company. They're actually still successfully operating. You know,
they just made a lot of money off of the sale of Reddit.
Right. Yeah. So Condé Nast. So they originally were just like sort of a holding company for a lot of different magazines. Like, you know, some of the most popular or famous ones are GQ and some others. And they have pivoted. Like, do you still know people in that space? Because they have pivoted to more of a digital media landscape and moving news out more quickly.
Yeah.
Did that require sort of a turnover of people who were just more fast movers, or?
No, I wouldn't say it's a turnover, and I definitely have a lot of friends that are still in the industry. My ex-wife's still in the industry. She was a beauty editor at Allure, and eventually the editor-in-chief of Women's Health, and so know a lot of people that are there, and for the most part, they've all pivoted to digital, and the brands that are and the titles that are really good have been able to make that change. So I wouldn't say it's a turnover, but yeah, you get people that, you know, that I think would have stayed their entire life and their entire career in magazines that are now feeling like they have to pivot and maybe find something else. And
you were specifically working on the print, so you're like, okay, I'm not going to be pivoting here. Like, I got to figure something else out.
Right.
So let's talk about Grady's Cold Brew. First of all, you named it after yourself.
Yeah, which is bizarre. Yeah. I'm a very shy person. Yeah. And I hate being on camera, and I get nervous during interviews and stuff like this. So, really an odd decision to use my name for the product, but it's New Orleans style, which we'll get into. But you know, my nickname my entire life has been Grady. My real name's Grayson, but everyone knew me as Grady, and it felt Southern, and it felt like a kind of New Orleans style, and it fit the brand in that sense.
Yeah, okay.
And friendly. I think it sounds friendly.
Why coffee? I mean, to me, and given I'm not a coffee connoisseur, so you know, educate me if I'm wrong on this, but to me, and I could say this really about a lot of physical product companies and just a lot of companies in general, does the world need another coffee brand? You know,
sure.
And of all the things that you could do, why that?
Yeah, and I think that at the time, this is, you know, cold brew specifically, does the world need more just straight coffee brands? Probably not. Do they need more cold brew brands at this point? Probably not too. But
what's the time period? I guess maybe that would help.
Yeah. So I was at GQ. This is 2010. And again, I was looking for a pivot. I knew that I, you know, wanted to try to start a business, so I was just kind of on the lookout. What do I want to do? And kind of open to everything. And had experienced cold brew from the coffee shop standpoint, and it was really new.
So you could go into a coffee shop and order
a coffee shop.
Like a lot of it, was that like a common thing here?
Not common for like high-end coffee shops. This was before Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and stuff like that had cold brew. So
And were they doing like iced coffee?
everyone was doing iced coffee, but very few people were doing cold brew. And I tried it at some of the higher end ones, a Blue Ball or whatever, and I was really impressed with how good it was, and it was a better version of iced coffee, but you were also paying a premium for it. You know, it's still remains very expensive, but at the time you're probably talking $5 for a cup of cold brew and then a tip on top of it. And so it was a treat. It was something that I indulged in every once in a while, but for the most part didn't fit in my lifestyle at that price point. And so there was a day, and I read every single article that came across my desk when I was at GQ, but at one point there was an article by a staff writer, a guy named Mark Kirby, and it was titled "Suck It, Starbucks." And
I will just say a quick pause.
Yeah.
Magazines are the kings of headlines.
Yeah.
They write better headlines than anyone.
Yeah, they were great, and that one certainly resonated with me. But what it did was taught me how to cold brew coffee, and it taught me.
It was like a how-to article.
It was a how-to article, and the whole premise of it was like, don't spend a ton of money at the coffee shops. It's really easy to do on your own. And so it said, go out and buy the biggest French press you can purchase, big Bodum French press, and gave me a ratio to do, and said, instead of making each cup individually, brew a week's worth of concentrate. So you do it once, and then you have it for the whole week, and it's really a simple process, and it's really inexpensive to do. And so I started, just making that for my own kind of personal use, and would bring a bottle into work and have it for the whole week, and then little by little, I would introduce someone else at GQ to it, and next thing you know, like the art department, the photo department are kind of asking for their bottles, and I'm making a lot of this. It just is all in my
you just
my
like
home
do it.
kitchen.
You're just like the office coffee.
Yeah, office
maker.
coffee guy, and living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn at the time, and bringing these bottles of coffee to work, and then word kind of got out beyond GQ to the rest of Condé Nast, and so I'd start getting. Because I at this point I'm like, I'm going to charge for it. It's like
Why don't I try and make some money?
Yeah,
off
I
this?
might as well try to make a little money and not just to give it away, because I am taking a lot of time to make this stuff at home.
And you're buying ingredients and stuff like that.
Yeah, and word's getting around, and so then I started kind of getting calls from someone at Vogue or someone at Wired or someone at Allure that had heard about this cold brew coffee guy. So next thing I know, I'm taking the L train into the city, carrying 12 of these really heavy 1 liter bottles of cold brew, and I'm just kind of acting like a drug dealer, like doing
Like,
cash
I got you.
transactions.
I got you.
I got you, and that was it. I mean, there were cash transactions in the elevator banks of Condé Nast.
You got my cold brew, man. I need it.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was like, all right, so these are the most popular magazines in the country and the world in a lot of respects, and these are the trendsetters and these are the tastemakers, and they're addicted to my coffee.
Yeah.
And that was really the kind of confidence booster I needed. That this thing has legs. This can be a business that goes beyond just the magazine world.
So how do you jump it? How do you take the next step then? You right now you're just doing back alley deals, slinging cold brew for cash, just giving it to the addicts in the magazine business. And they are coffee addicts. Most of the
they are definitely
journalists are
coffee
like,
addicts.
your proper coffee addicts.
Sure.
How do you make the jump to getting it out to like the rest of the people,
So, I'm done with just like blank bottles. I started branding it, came up with a brand. I was lucky that a good buddy of mine who's the art director at GQ, a guy named Tom Alberti, helped me design the logo and the label. And so it at least had a kind of a business identity, but this is all still done out of my home kitchen. But what was kind of popping up at the time, and really one of the biggest kind of catalysts to this business getting off the ground, was this outdoor food market called Smorgasburg.
Okay. That's where it's in New York?
Yeah, there's multiple locations now. The original one was in Williamsburg, banks of the East River. And this was I look at it like just an entrepreneurial incubator, you know. It really kind of removed the barriers of entry to entrepreneurship in a couple ways. One, to vend there, and everyone you get like a 10 by 10 tent.
Yeah.
And you pay a fee for a Saturday and a Sunday, and you go there in the morning, you set up, and you can sell your wares, if that's barbecue, if that's cold brew, whatever it is.
It's all food, though.
Primarily food and beverage, yeah.
Okay.
And what was really great about the way that they worked is you had to be above board. Like, you had to have a 20C license, which is how you're allowed to manufacture a food product in state of New York. You had to have a commercial kitchen, so I couldn't do it outside of in my home kitchen anymore. It really kind of forced me to take that big step of, you know, starting an LLC, getting this license and all of that. But
okay, so you had decided to do it.
Yeah.
And now you had to go through a bunch of steps in order to do it. The kitchen thing seems like the biggest step, right?
That was a big
so you had to
step.
go get a license. You had to make sure, right?
Yeah.
And so those are some hoops, but it sounds like what it mostly is like restaurant owners getting the word out about their food by going to this kind of central.
Even more like kind of like consumer product goods, like, you know, a mustard or a jam brand or stuff like that.
Yeah. So
as well as food businesses. And, you know, when I say it kind of removes barrier of entry, it's like both offensive and defensive. Offensive in the sense that, like, for $10,000 without having to quit your day job, because I didn't quit the magazine world right away, because this is only on the weekends.
Right.
You know, for, you know, I would say probably it took maybe $10,000 start, which is not nothing, but also not a crazy amount of money.
Did you just kind of bankroll that yourself over time?
Yeah. I think that was my wife and I at the time. We did that.
Or you took the money from your back alley coffee sales.
Right. Some of these sales. And, you know, the other cool thing about Smorgasburgers is it's kind of like defensive. Like, there's a lot of brands that, you know, launch something at Smorgasburg and it doesn't work out, or they end up not liking it, and they didn't bet the farm.
It's a testing ground.
Right, it's a testing ground, and you have just incredible exposure, just thousands and thousands of people in New York City and tourists and everyone that are being exposed to your product, and it took off. We did really well there.
How did you get the kitchen? What did you do there?
Kitchen was Craigslist find. I consider myself an expert at Craigslist, and I think I could, you know, really find unique, weird.
You're like, whatever, what you need, I can find it for you.
Well, this one was like a little 600 square foot basement under the Williamsburg Bridge.
But it was a certified. What does it need to be?
You know, we had to, you know, get the refrigeration in place. You had to have a hand washing sink. You had to have some plumbing. The floors had to be moppable.
And that's part of this 10,000 you're talking about.
Yeah, that's all part of this. And at this time, I also
then you can come have somebody come and be like, "Yep, it's a commercial kitchen. You're good."
And I quickly kind of realized that this was too much for me to take on my own, and so I teamed up with two good friends in the neighborhood, a guy named Dave Sands and Kyle Buckley, two co-founders of mine. Dave was, you know, working a very corporate gig at Xerox at the time and was miserable, and that does not fit his personality. And Kyle was a Canadian guy, graduated from McGill, and he was just fresh out of college. And, you know, I was always very aware of what I was good at and what I wasn't. And I was the kind of product guy and the idea guy, but I was no salesman, so that's where Dave came in. I was not good at the business and finance side. That's where Kyle came in. And so, you know, it was really obvious that I needed some help there.
And they were willing to come into it at like kind of no pay, just be like, oh, I just want to have a co-founder stake.
Yeah, and you know, again, like Kyle was fresh out of college, so he had it was kind of almost an internship for him.
How did that relationship come about? Like you said, you knew him from the neighborhood.
Yeah, so Dave, we had a mutual friend, a photographer at Details at the time, introduced, and since I was in the neighborhood too, I knew him. And Kyle, we were introduced to at a party in Williamsburg, and told him about it. He said, I like the sound of that, and came on board. And like, none of us, we didn't take in, you know, any salary for those first couple of years. And so, you know, Dave was scraping by on savings from his job. And, you know, I was supported by my wife and Kyle with his girlfriend, and so, you know, but it was fun. It didn't matter. Like,
we're just doing it for fun.
It was amazing, and I think that, you know, I went from being full time in magazines to then freelance 3 weeks a month, and 2 weeks a month, and 1 week a month, and finally when GQ wrote an article about the brand. I was like, that's what I was waiting for. And
that's like your big exit from GQ.
Yep.
So I'm going to double click a couple things because a lot of the people who listen to this are, some of them are like more advanced entrepreneurs, founders. Some of them are early in their stage. I want to double click a couple things that I think are like big takeaways. Two that are in everyone's control. So number one, co-founder relationships are an interesting thing. And I don't think they can be forced. I think they can only come from just actually putting yourself around other people who are trying to do something. You know what I mean? That they're putting yourself around other people who are smart, have good skill sets, and are trying to do something more than just work a job and go home, right? And the second thing is, I think a lot of consumer brands, especially most people who listen to if they have a brand, a physical product brand, most of them are D2C brands. I think a lot of consumer brands try and do this thing where they launch online, launch D2C. And I really like the idea, if you can, of finding some sort of market that fits your product, right? So in some markets, it's not like you found a food and beverage specific one. There are other markets that, like, I don't know, if you make whatever, if you have t-shirts or clothing, there's market, sort of like outdoor markets or weekend markets for stuff like that. If you sell candles, if you sell, whatever it is, you sell wallets and phone cases, right? Yep. I like it because it's a testing ground and it allows you to go the retail route without having to sell into a bunch of retail. Like, if I put this to people who are shopping, if I put this up against a bunch of other products, do people buy it at a high rate? And what are they saying about it? Right. Why are they saying they buy it? Who are the type of people? You get to know your customers really well. And then the third thing I'll say that maybe isn't a controllable factor for everybody is, this is the benefit of being in New York. You are around people. Everyone here is trying to do something. Yeah. Everyone, like it's a constant. You live a life of networking, right? When you live here, everybody is either somebody or is trying to be somebody. So and then you have these incredible outdoor market dedicated specifically to food and beverage that you don't have that in Columbia, Missouri.
No, but they should, and it's funny. Like I actually wrote a letter to.
There'd be better barbecue there, probably.
I wrote a letter to the Hillary Clinton campaign when she was running for president. And I was pitching this idea. Yeah, it was in a lot of ways it was kind of based off Smorgasburg, but I called it Market America, and I was like, the government needs to do like
this is made my business
a New Deal type thing. Where you make these markets across the country. And I think that they could be staffed and run by veterans who are experts at container and tent cities, stuff like that. Yeah. And so I think it's kind of a good idea
because then you could get a lot of people can bring a product to market in a testing kind of way, not expensive, and just see like does this work?
Yeah, and at Smorgasburg, like some of them, the brands didn't work, but many of them did. And are still around and have brick and mortar places, and so
so took off at Smorgasburg.
Yeah, and interesting at Smorgasburg. Another reason why that was such a huge part of it was at the time Whole Foods had what they called foragers, and shout out to Ellie who was the forager from Whole Foods that kind of discovered us, and she found us at Smorgasburg. And at the time, this is before Amazon purchased it, and Whole Foods was really different. They were so focused on local and regional products, and it didn't have to be national brands. And so they were really out there seeking kind of new products. And cold brew was brand new, especially in kind of a bottled grocery store version, not by the cup. And that obviously made a huge difference. They asked us to kind of apply to get into Whole Foods. We were able to do it because we got into Whole Foods. We were finally able to get a distributor. Before that, Dave, Kyle, and I, we bought a used Air Force box truck from Texas on eBay, called a Riggins. And so this is me after not driving for 10 years at all. Next thing I know, I'm driving a box truck in Manhattan doing my own distribution, which was terrifying.
That is, riding in an Uber here is terrifying. Like I could not imagine driving.
It was
And
not
especially
fun.
the last time you drove was not here. It was in
Right. It was in
open
Missouri.
roads in the,
Yeah.
you know. Okay, so that's, okay, right. So that's kind of the journey. You're starting to get into some retail locations. At what point did you say, like, we can't bankroll this just from the cash flow? You know?
I mean, it was really a pretty rapid growth at the very beginning. Ended up stabilizing, chilling out a little bit. But those first, like, within one calendar year, we went from that 600 square foot basement to a 6,000 square foot kind of brewery,
And that was just through Smorgasburg, and then getting into Whole Foods, getting into
Whole
other
Foods, getting
retail.
into Fresh Direct.
Now you're delivering it in this truck. And,
Also got to give a shout out to Brooklyn Kitchen, which is an incredible, really legendary grocery store at the time in Williamsburg that was the first people to ever take in our product. And so we're great in Brooklyn, great in Manhattan, but if you're self-distributing, you drop off a couple cases and you come back out and there's a ticket on your truck and there goes all the profit. And so we quickly realized that we needed to scale this up, both in terms of manufacturing, because, when we were in the 600 square foot, this is literally everything is by hand. We are hand labeling, hand capping, hand washing every bottle.
Right.
And it just, couldn't scale up.
You can do however many per hour just by hand. Right?
So we had a little bit of funding from friends and close family, but then quickly when we stepped up to the bigger place and we had to buy some serious equipment, and there was no blueprint for cold brew. Like we were taking some stuff from the wine industry and the beer industry and kind of cobbling together this system of brewing, but it's expensive stuff. These are 1,000-gallon stainless steel tanks and bottling lines, stuff like that. And so we decided that we wanted to go and get an SBA loan, and they're kind of the lenders of last resort. It's not no big bank was going to loan us any money because we didn't have a track record. We were only a year old. But the SBA is amazing in the sense that they're willing to loan, small companies, and we didn't even have a business plan to start, but the SBA required us to have a business plan, so it made us really think.
So you got on Google and you're like, what is a business plan? How do you write one?
We had to figure that out, and we had to convince them that this is a viable business, and they loaned us a good chunk of money, and I encourage everyone to look into SBA loans. They have their own sets of stress that are associated with them. My wife at the time and I, we both had to get life insurance policy. A home that I just bought had to go up as collateral, and that's stressful. That house with that being on my shoulder, that weight for I think I'm going to pay them off all four of them this year, but I can't tell you how much that weighed. Like, it's not just, maybe the business goes out, but also you lose your home
if that happens.
And so that always just kind of added a level of stress. But the plus side of it is we didn't give up a lot of equity. And we kept control, and so it's a gamble, but I think it paid off for us.
So real quick, I just want to walk through these funding things, because we're sort of into the tactical part, right? Like, you took a little money from friends and family, you said. Mm-hmm. How did that work? Did they get equity? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, they did get equity, and for entrepreneurs out there,
they still have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that it's really important that I think it's easy to just not care that much about corporate governance and operating agreements and equity and what you're giving up because you're not making any money yet.
Right.
And so
you're like, should I really be thinking about this, or should I just be thinking about selling
away a lot? But in the long run, if the business ends up being successful, these things obviously really matter. But no, it's just people tasted the product. Like, at the time, we were getting crazy press because it was so new. So every magazine was writing about it. We were on TV. It was just a really hot item, and no one had done cold brew like this before, and so I think that everyone kind of saw the potential in it, and really it was more me probably turning down friends and stuff that wanted to invest.
Can I write you a check? No. Can I write you a check?
No, I don't want to get again that extra pressure. Eventually,
but you took a few.
Yeah, I took a few, and then we did the SBA loans. We ended up doing a series of 4 SBA loans. then we also did another round where this was probably like six years in, where
Okay.
I was like, you know what?
Well, let's walk to that. So do you have, you took that stuff out so that you could scale your distribution into retail.
Yep.
And then where next step? Is it just scale distribution into retail more and more throughout New York City? Or did you guys like have your own location?
So we knew right away that we had to do some direct to consumer, and obviously like having a website, you had to have it. You know, if anyone's going to write about you, they need to know your website address and everything like that. So we did that, and then we're like, all right, so we're going to start selling it, but we're talking about a heavy perishable glass product, which is just
it's hard to ship.
Absolute nightmare to shift. And so we kind of were really thinking about like what's a way to offer this product online to everyone at an affordable price that doesn't compromise on anything. And that's when we came up with this product, which we call our bean bags. And you can kind of think of it as almost a giant tea bag, only filled with ground coffee beans. And what this allowed us to do, because we kind of realized, like, you know, this is the exact same blend that we're brewing and bottling for people, but the customers can add the water at their place. And so by removing that water, you massively extend the shelf life, the lightness. It all of a sudden becomes a real good product for online sales. And so I think that was a really big part. So we're, really trying to saturate tri-state area, New York City, with the liquid product.
Which is, you would call that ready to drink in the beverage industry.
Ready to drink, ready to pour. Because it is a concentrate, it's a little bit different than what most people would consider a ready to drink, which would be more single serve.
Don't take it off and undo the lid.
No, and a lot of people, they didn't realize it was a concentrate.
So you should pour it and mix it
you should pour it 1-to-1 ratio, and then adjust it from there. But so we had that going on in tri-state area. Then we had the bean bags and the dry product that really started kind of extending the national footprint, even international.
How were you guys getting it? Like when you started selling direct to consumer, how are you getting the word out? Like, were you running ads? Was it how
a lot of word of mouth. We definitely relied on all the publicity that we were getting. That was a huge help.
Gotcha. So it was also a big press push when you launched direct to consumer.
I think that what's interesting about the money that we raised, like, it went into funding these breweries. We went from the one under the bridge to the 6,000 square foot one, and then a couple of years later we moved to a 15,000 square foot place in the South Bronx. And all of these things were very expensive to build these out, to buy the equipment, to scale up. And I think a lot of our competitors who didn't manufacture themselves but used a co-packer were able to take any of the money that they raised and just bump it into sales and marketing. And, we didn't really do that. Of course we were doing the Facebook and Google ads, stuff like that, but not to a crazy degree.
Not heavy.
Not that heavy. Which, right or wrong, maybe we should have when, those were a lot more impactful.
Those were a lot. There was a time where those were
those things work.
Okay, so you're 6 years in. Tell me why make the decision to do some crowdfunding?
Definitely looked into the more traditional route of going to VCs, stuff like that, and took a lot of meetings, in my opinion, wasted a lot of time. You're having lunch, you're having drinks, people are coming, doing factory tours. It was just nonstop. And, when you started, you say, all right, this is the valuation we think we're worth, and they might agree on the spot there. And then you get through, 2 months worth of diligence, and when it's finally time for them to write a check or make an offer, it's a complete lowball. And it's just like, why'd you do this?
Why did we do all this?
Yeah, we told you this is a waste of your time too. And that kind of went on for almost a year when we were kind of doing that process. And eventually, we were definitely in a cash crunch, and we needed to raise money. And I had heard about this new thing called crowdfunding. Regulation CF. At the time, the maximum amount you could raise through Regulation CF was 1.07 million, kind of a weird number. Now I think it's up to 1.07.
It's very specific.
Very specific. And we had a really strong following. So many customers and people that just kind of loved the brand already had been asking to invest, and so we're like, all right, we have a good following. Let's let's offer it up to everyone. And it's a complex process, but it worked.
What did you offer for the crowdfunding? Because usually crowdfunding is for when you don't have a product.
Yeah, so we offered Class B shares, equity, voting shares, same as what pretty much everyone, every investor has within the company. So you actually were able to own a part of this brand that you loved, and to us that it's a lot of people. Like it was 1,200 people, and probably the average check size was like $700,000. It was low,
right?
But now there is the it's a little difficult to manage 1,200 investors.
Yeah, how do you do that? How do you
table.
do that? Like what
It's all about communication.
So
we do quarterly investor reports that are really specific to go out to everyone. I'm sure it wouldn't surprise me if some of our competitors are in there too. But to us, it made supercharged brand ambassadors. We got 1,200 people that have a real vested interest in this company because they own a part of this company, and they're sharing it with all their friends and family. And a lot of people reached out to offer services or things that they could help with, and so it was successful. We were able to raise the full 1.07 that we were going
and
for.
Did that just, how did you even advertise that? Would that all come from just network? Did you have an email list? What?
Yeah, those email list, which was not crazy, but you need that. It also it went out to friends and family again. That now this is completely open to everyone. Some kind of online advertising, but not a whole lot, because the more you're spending on that, it's kind of defeating the purpose of needing to raise money. And so when we were doing it, that's when the pandemic hit, and we're lucky. Also, the crowdfunding platform that we use, Start Engine, they allowed you to make disbursements as like on a rolling basis. So it's not like you had to wait till you get the full amount in or the max that you were trying to raise before you could start withdrawing money. So once we kind of got over the little cash crunch that we had, then we didn't feel the need to really pump it or boost it or make this campaign end super fast. We were able to kind of let it roll. It went on for a year. This is also during the pandemic, and I have some survivor's guilt from this, but the pandemic was really, pretty strong for our business.
That is the case for a lot of, your online sales probably.
Yeah, well, online, and also this is, we were and remain a true omni-channel business. So, we had office services and food service, and both of those channels completely evaporated overnight, just stopped. But luckily, we kind of had the right product for this experience. We make an at-home cold brew that you buy one bottle and you have a week's worth, or you can order it online and have months worth. And so, we were able to do pretty well in that period. And we also at this time with the crowdfunding, I knew I didn't want to do this continuous loop of trying to raise capital. It's so time consuming. Like I said, it's really it's not what I'm good at.
It's like I want to just raise the money I'm going to need once, and then just use the business to
Let me concentrate on the business and running that. And we really shifted as a company to being profitable, being sustainable. And I think that some of our competitors had a different approach. It was, don't worry about profitability.
Just take market share.
Grow top line revenue, practically give your product away, and then you'll get acquired by someone. And those days are over. That
money dried up around 2022, 2023.
Yeah. And so, I think that I'm really, really proud of the company, that we've been around for 13 years, that we're not in a position where we need to raise capital, because it would be really hard in these times. And so I think that getting the company to that place is one of the things that I'm definitely most proud of.
That's amazing. All right. So one of the things I like to do with the last couple minutes, a little bit different, is sort of a brainstorming session around something you're trying to solve right now, usually in the business. I mean, if you want to talk about personal problems, we can talk about that, I guess. But
Sure.
but you know, some kind of problem you're trying to solve in the business right now. And I think it's valuable for a couple of reasons. So first of all, I think that we tend to talk about problems we've had after we've solved them. And then sometimes people don't realize like everyone is trying to work through something all the time, even successful brands, right? So it's helpful there. It's helpful to see how successful brands think through their problem solving processes and things like that. So, you know, what's something that you're working on in the business right now? Just something you're just trying to crack, a problem you're trying to solve, or a barrier, or something that's holding you back that that we could do a little brainstorm on.
I think that it's kind of what the next step is in terms of our location. You know, we have some room. We rent. We don't own the building. Capacity as we continue to scale up. One of the big things that's happened this year is we're kind of getting out of the natural channel and really trying to make a push into more conventional grocery. So Albertson Safeways and Kroger's are launching now, and it's a lot of product. And we know, because we've done it on 3 separate occasions where we've had to build out these breweries, that it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money, and you can't wait till your lease is up and then make the decision. You really got to get ahead of it, and so we're really trying to figure out what our next move is. You know, ideally we would be able to stay in the 5 boroughs. Like what this city has given to us in terms of a place to start business is incredible. At the same time, it's one of the trickiest places to have a manufacturing business. You know, I'm proud of my 15,000 square foot, but that's puny compared to someplace in the Midwest, you know, and we're really jammed in there. And so, you know, sooner or later we're going to have to make that move, but I want to keep making it ourselves. I think that, you know, I taste every batch. I'm at the brewery every day. That's hugely important, both from a lifestyle, like I said, all the way back from childhood of watching these factory tour shows. Like, this is what I love. I wanted to escape the cubicle to make it on my own. And so, trying to figure out how to do that next.
Do you, how confident are you that you're going to have the demand to need like a much larger facility over the next few years?
I think I have a high degree of confidence. I think this goes back to kind of, you know, we've had opportunities to get into big chains and new regions that we've turned down because we knew we didn't have the capacity to make it, or it would strain us too much. And, you know, I think that that's something that a lot of companies kind of get screwed by, is they take on every opportunity that they possibly can, and then they're not able to necessarily meet the demand. And so we've been, I think, more kind of strategic and calculated about it, and careful about it than a lot of people. And so, I think that, you know, we're really well known in these parts, but you know, there's the Midwest, like you can't get our coffee really in my home state, which drives me crazy. It's the, you know, the big markets, your Chicago's, your LA now finally. And that's where the product's always resonated, but I want to be everywhere. Like I want to sell to everyone, and online we have been able to do that, but getting it the liquid form, which remains our flagship product, like in kind of all grocery stores, is the next challenge.
How much do you think? So right now you're in the city, you're in like Manhattan on the island. How much do you think that your demand will increase? Like there, it seems like you have good market penetration. Like you're not going to see a huge spike in demand there. Like you're kind of, it might go up, but you're past. So if you were just servicing the city, you could probably stay in your current location. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I would say so, but our ambitions are definitely beyond that.
Well, what about like, could you take? Because you're probably thinking about like, okay, do I go somewhere, you know, where there's more land? Because that's a problem with any island. San Francisco has the same problem, is just space. Like width of space is very hard to come by. There's not very much of it. We're on an island and there's a bunch of people. So, I mean, you basically would have to go somewhere where there's like either state or Jersey, New York State, Jersey, or somewhere in the Midwest or something like that. I think you're probably in the zone of thinking about like, do I give up my spot here and go like find a bigger spot over here? What if is it viable, or have you thought about like, what if we keep that spot, service the city with that spot, and maybe go get something that's not as huge outside the city to distribute
absolutely.
to everyone else?
I think that, we've thought a lot about New York City remains our biggest market by a long shot.
Yeah.
But we also ship a lot across the country, and shipping a refrigerated product to the West Coast is really expensive. So one idea would be you have the East Coast brewery, you have a West Coast brewery, or you have one mega brewery in mid-Missouri and centrally located and go from there. I also like, what Brooklyn Brewery did. They have their kind of awesome flagship, and actually Brooklyn Brewery, their headquarters, they're building a new facility, and it's going to take over our old spot in Williamsburg, Greenpoint, where our second brewery was located, which is awesome because they were really, really helpful in telling us what equipment to buy and kind of mentoring us. But, a lot of their beer is produced upstate where there's space, but they have that tap room. They have the place where the Willy Wonka side of it is, where you can
what I'm saying,
try new
like,
flavors. That's
kind of keep
great.
that original space. That seems, and so I'm going to just double tap on a couple things that I'm hearing from you. One, you're thinking through a lot of different solutions. And two, I'm guessing you've talked to other people who have expanded, have had this similar problem, maybe not cold brew companies, but other breweries, or, maybe even have talked to like people who are experts in demand planning, sort of distribution into grocery stores, and are trying to tell you, you're probably going to need this much space and stuff like that. Right. Have you talked to people like that and you're trying to gather as much information and data on it as you can?
Yeah, no, I think that, definitely look at peers and anything in the beverage space. But, like I said, a lot of people use co-packers.
That's
and
true.
which is not, not a bad way to do things at all either. I think that those can certainly be utilized as long as they're making your product up to your standards. That's a good way. I mean, one of the biggest things that I've learned having a manufacturing facility and making stuff in-house is, my God, how much equipment breaks.
Yeah.
You just never know what you're going to walk into. And it's a constant source of stress. So I definitely understand not wanting to, be in charge of that. Labor has been really tricky, especially after the pandemic. So, getting quality people to work and stay is tricky, and it's not like those things aren't going on at co-packers. It's just you're not kind of responsible for it.
What do you think is the core? I think I'm reading into like maybe one core issue here, and that is like there's one path of expansion where we would maybe be able to cash flow it, and there's one path of expansion where maybe we'd have to do another raise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and you're really trying to decide whether you want to do another raise. It's not necessarily that you're just trying to decide, do we do that? It's like you're really trying to decide, do you want to get back on this raise cycle? Because you're off of it, you're cash flowing, you're profitable.
Right. And that's true. And if I pay off my SBA loans, wouldn't surprise me if I go for another round. So that's certainly an option. Now that we have a 13-year track record and we've been profitable for 5 years, now all of a sudden traditional banks and that sort of lender is opened up to us in a way that it wasn't before. Money
is the whole thing at scale becomes a finance game.
It's really tricky, and I would say we're the tortoise of the industry. We've been low and slow.
It's good. That fits your whole brand. It fits your vibe. It fits the brand. It's like, look, I'll be on the cover of Slow Company magazine.
Right.
It's going to be a great company.
Exactly.
Well, and we don't always solve the problem, right? Like that's a complex one. I certainly don't have distribution expertise or something like that. But I think it's kind of the core of like, do I want to finance this myself? Finance this? Do I want to, how much debt do I want to take on especially when we're profitable and things are going nicely? It's an interesting problem. The other reason I say this is because there's a lot of really smart people in the audience, and sometimes they'll reach out to you and be like, "Hey, man, I actually do have some expertise in this."
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, where can everybody find the brand? Where can they find you? What do we do?
Social media, it's Grady's Cold Brew. Website, Grady'sColdBrew.com. We're also available pretty extensively on Amazon, Whole Foods, Fresh Direct, Sprouts Farmers Market. Albertson, Safeway, Kroger. Yeah.
Killing it.
Yeah. Try to find us. But if we're not in your local store, grocery store, tell them you need us there. That always helps.
Yeah.
But if not, you can find us online.
Grady, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.